And that is why when you always come back to Africa, we tell you this is your homeland, this is your roots, and we're always happy to have you back home. So I will say Akwaba. Akwaba means you are welcome. And how would you respond with that? So Akwaba. Okay. You are welcome to Assin Manso. This is the central region of Ghana, and Assin Manso was once a slave market, one of the most important slave markets during the discourse of the slave trade. According to a history book, Indigenous Slavery in Ghana, written by Professor Akosi Adumapebi, she states that out of the 63 slave markets and castles in Ghana, 2 of them were most important. One of them is the one in the northern part of Ghana called the Salaga Slave Market. That was the largest. That was where several other Africans were assembled, and they were allowed to walk all the way to the castle. The second important one was this particular market, Assin Manso Slave Market. This was the busiest. And this was the busiest in the sense that it was closer to the exit port, Cape Coast Castle, Elmina, and Fort Amsterdam. So anytime the slave masters needed the slave, they just come here to get them because it was very close. And that is why this place was very busy. As I said, journey started from Salaga, but before I take you through the journey, prior to the Europeans' arrival, there was a system that the Africans were practicing. They were fighting for territorial expansions due to migration. So once I fight over your territory, everything that you own becomes mine. So the system at that point was indentured servitude. It was totally different from slavery. Once you fight, you win. If they have war victims, if they have farmers, if they have doctors or healers, you induct and integrate them as part of your own clan. The difference with indentured servitude is that, with slavery, is that in indentured servitude, you are not put in chains and shackles. Your names or your identities are not taken off. You are not a property. Once you give birth, your child does not inherit a status of a slave. If you are a farmer that is allowed to work on a plantation, you can feed from that plantation, you can own some of the crops. After a maximum of 7 years, you are guaranteed freedom. If you compare this with slavery, you realize that it's total opposite. In slavery, you have no freedom. You are put in chains and shackles. Your names and your identities are taken off. You are not guaranteed freedom at any point in time. And once you give birth, your child is automatically seen as a slave. If you compare these two, you realize they are different. But anytime you raise the issue about slavery, people jump into a defense mode and say Africans were already practicing slavery even before the Europeans arrived. I always say no. But there was a system, and that system led our people to participate in the slavery. Now when they came, the Portuguese came in 1471, they requested for a land to build a trading center. They requested from King Kwame Ansa I of Elmina. They were dealing in ivory, pepper, guns, and gunpowders and other spices. After they requested for a land, they wanted to give out the resources in exchange for the land. But the king kept turning them down. Anytime he turns them down, they go back and enrich their proposals and bring it back. But every time they bring it back, he keeps turning them down. They were very persistent. And due to that, he thought they meant well. That is why he gave them the land to build the training center. The first thing the Portuguese built in 1482 was the Elmina Castle. They didn't only build a castle, they had chambers hidden at the bottom of the castle, which they later transformed into a slave-holding cell. Now they have the castle, they needed the slaves. And that is when they told the king and chiefs that these war victims you have inducted as a result of the servitude are not your own people. If you keep them for some number of years, they learn your strength, your weaknesses, and turn against you. They have powerful weapons, they said. That is the guns and gunpowders. Once we give you this, you don't need these war victims. And that is when I call my leaders greedy and naive. They believe the strangers over their own people, gave out the war victims, took the guns and gunpowders. And that is, at that point, the barter trade started. Because there is an exchange, and in business that is a trade. They realized that they went on for a while, they realized that the numbers that the king and chiefs were given was less than what they actually needed to go and work on their plantations. And that is when they transformed from barter trade into raiding, kidnapping, burning homes, forceful capture. Because they knew they were too powerful, they could go to a community, kidnap a group of them, put them in chains, transport them. Go to a community, burn homes, force people out, put them in chains, and ancestral graveyard. These remains are here to cancel a particular perception. When you go to the castle, there is a door called the door of no return. As the name implies, the slave masters built that door with the perception that once you walk through, you are never coming back. That name, that perception has to be changed. And that is why these remains were brought back. The first one is in the memory of Lady Crystal. She was a slave that was taken from this land to Kingston, Jamaica. She got there, she was put in prison, one of their dungeons. She wouldn't eat anything, she embarked on a hunger strike. She wanted to die out of her own will than to die up from the torment of the slave masters. The slave masters found out she wasn't eating. That is why they had to punish her. What they did to punish Lady Crystal was to chisel her teeth out from her mouth she lost all the teeth, she kept losing blood. After doing that to her, they would put a funnel in her mouth and force her to eat through the funnel. But she was very strong and stubborn. After doing that to her, she would put a finger down her throat and throw everything out. She did that and died in 1831. Her remains were preserved. In 1998, it was flown back. That was the year we started celebrating our emancipation. It was brought right here to be buried. We believe she represents the Jamaicans. She has gotten the chance to be back. The second one in the middle is in the memory of Samuel Castle. He was taken on as a slave right from this land to the United States. When he got there, they realized he was strong, had the muscles. He served in the military, served for a number of years, fought during the Mexican-American War in 1846. Unfortunately, he didn't survive. He was buried in the United States. The remain was preserved particularly by his great-grandnephew, Sonny Abubadika Castle. In 1998 as well, he was flown back right here to be buried. We believe he represents our brothers and sisters from the United States, and they have gotten the chance to return. The third remain is from Barbados. It was brought back in 2019. That is 400 years since the first documented slave ship landed in Virginia. From 1690 to 2019 marks 400 years, and 2019 was the year we celebrated the year of return. So the Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley, suggested an excavation. They went to a slave cemetery in Barbados, excavated the remains, and brought it back. But when they got to the airport, they had to pick a bus to the castle. On their way to the castle, they got to a town called Abanze, which was closer to the castle. The people of the community welcomed them and told them that when these people were leaving our land, they didn't leave by bus. They had to walk through a particular door called the Door of No Return. So the ashes was brought down. They held a ceremony right along the shores of the sea, poured libation to honor the gods and ancestors of the land, and they forced the Door of No Return back open. The ashes was brought through that door right here to be buried. That is when the door was physically changed from the Door of No Return to the Door of Return. We believe these are our ancestors. They've gotten the chance to return, but unfortunately, they didn't get the chance to come back alive. But the ones that keep canceling the perception is you and I. As descendants, we're always here and we keep returning. That is why we say it's a return journey, but not a door of no return. The people that even come back is more than the people that left us. That is why we're always grateful to have you back home. And that is why when you come, I always tell you, Akwaba. Medasi, yeah. So we're going to make a walk to the river. That is where they had their bath. But before that, I'll show you a metal ball and chain. Came to visit, just like you. Had the opportunity to go to the river, step foot into it. But one of them was fortunate enough. When she was making a walk in the river, she hit her leg on something. She was curious to pull it out. And this was what she found, a metal ball and chain. I call this the evidence of the history, because without this, what we keep saying is a myth. This was what they had on their legs to prevent them from escaping. This metal ball weighs 10 kilos. As an enslaved African, you have 2 of these on your legs. By the time you get to the river, you would have developed all sorts of cuts on your skin. There were animals in there. They could sense the blood. They kept attacking our ancestors. Most of them died right at this spot and at the riverside. And that is why we believe as we walk on this exact same part of our ancestors, we could be walking on the remains of our ancestors. If you prefer to take off your shoes, ground with the land of your ancestors, make the journey barefooted to the river, I'll allow you to do that. We take off our shoes right there and make the walk, but it's not compulsory. If you think due to health reasons you might not be able to, it's always fine if you don't take it off. Yeah, so it's optional. Like our ancestors, they had to walk through a forest with wild animals. They had cuts and blood on them. So the animals kept attacking them. Most of them died right on this spot and at the river. And that is why we believe as we walk through that door, we are entering into their abode, their territory. We have to seek their permission. Most of them are resting. And in a way of seeking their permission, we are going to knock on the door 3 times. As we knock, we will say, Ago, Ago, Ago. Ago in the Akan dialect is a way of seeking your permission. So we will knock 3 times and say Ago 3 times, then we get in.
Ago, 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 Ago.
Okay. Okay. So these are some of the chiefs that have reigned for the past years. You can see on my left. Nana Kwame Nkrumah, the 11th. He's from 1950 to 1968. He was followed by Barima Kwame Nkrumah, the 12th, from 1968 to 2016. And this is the 13th, the current one that is reigning. And you've noticed a trend that it moves from 11th, 12th to 13th. That is because there is a particular stool name that is permanent, and that is Kwame Nkrumah. So you can see Kwame Nkrumah in all of their names, and that is why the numbering keeps going up. So if I come as the next chief, as maybe Nana Kwame Nkrumah, I'll be the 14th. That is how it works. But once you come with a different stool name, maybe Nana Yabua, you change it automatically. That means the numbering starts from first, and that is how it works. So once you maintain the previous one, the numbering keeps going up. You change it, it starts from first, and the next one that comes after you will be the second. That is how it works. And there are instances where a stool is blackened. When we have a blackened stool, that means that the chief that has passed has kept a legacy. Pilgrimage, you always enjoy. And that is why you are coming back home, you have to wear white. So you are coming back to revisit and reconnect with the land of your ancestors. And that is exactly what we are going to do in the river. Now, this is the exact same river
It is.
that our ancestors had their bath. This was where they had their last bath. When you come, you notice a distinction. The one here on my left is moving pretty fast, but the one over here on the right is stagnant. When we are in the rainy season, it flows all the way to the side. So when they brought the enslaved Africans, they just allowed them to go into whatever river to have their bath, with their chains on and metal balls on them, just from this billboard, as you can see. So that is how they had to take the bath. The ones that were taking their bath over here where it is moving were losing their lives, because it was high and it was moving very fast. If, let's say, 4 of us are connected to a chain, once it pulls me, you will definitely fall. The slave masters realized they were losing lots of people over here. That is why they stopped them from taking the bath there and brought them here where it is stagnant to save most of them. And that is why they named this particular place the last bath. They believe that once you have your bath, that is the end of it. You are never returning to this particular land. But we always say this name is not right. That is why it has to be changed. The remains that were brought back are our ancestors, and they have gotten the chance to come back. But I always say, they don't cancel the perception like we do because they didn't get a chance to come back alive. But you and I, as descendants, keep coming here every single time. And that is why when you come as a descendant, we believe this is a return journey for you. That is why the first batch of return was built in 2007. So that when the descendants come, we give them the opportunity to go into the river, connect with it before they leave. Now, before we do that, as they were taking the bath with chains on, it was very difficult for them to clean themselves. So some of them were helping each other. Once you are in front of me, I help you clean your body, you also help the next person. The slave masters caught a group of them involved in that act. They thought they were trying to lose the chains out to escape. They had to get rid of them. They were killed and their remains were dumped right in the bamboos. That is why we believe this particular land is very sacred. That is why it's very advisable you make the walk barefooted, because you could be walking on the remains of your own ancestors. Now, after having their bath, they are now like finished products, finished commodities, because they were seeing them as such. The slave masters come from the various dungeons to get them: Cape Coast, Elmina, Fort Amsterdam. When they come, they bid for them just like goods, and they acquire them. There is auctioning. After they get them, they have to identify the slave as their own personal property. That is why they were doing the first branding. They put metals in fire. Once it becomes hot, they put it on the skin. As a female, you have it on your chest or breast normally, and as a guy, your arm or your back. So once they see you with an inscription on your body, they know that you belong to the slave master. That is how they were grouping and differentiating them. They are allowed to walk back to the dungeon. Unfortunately, when you get to the dungeon, your shipment may not be the same day. It may be in the next 2 or 3 months. You'll be kept inside those cells for 3 months. No lighting at all, no ventilation, no good food and water. They were given buckets in the dungeon to ease themselves. You could imagine the stench. Most of them developed diseases and died. Few survived, and they were the ones that were shipped. And even on that journey, most of them died. When you go to the dungeons today, you still smell the stench. Imagine 300 years ago when they were inside those cells. That is why I keep asking myself, how did they survive? But there is one thing: they survived because of us. Because if they had died, where would we be? We wouldn't be here in the first place. History would have been wiped off. And that was their intention. Their intention was not just sale. I always say their intention was sale and to rip Africa of our true identity. Because if you wanted to sell a person, why did the name mean so much to you? The identity was most important, and that is why they took it off. When you come back, we try to give you the naming ceremony because we believe that was the name that was taken off. We have to give you back that name. So once you're done, you get the names intact. And that is what you'll be using from now on. You don't have to convince us you're a local anymore. Yeah. So please come with me to the river. It's very cold. Yeah, very, very cold. You can step in.
So this was the actual spot.
The actual spot they had there, but the very spot where we're standing. You can step right here. No, not you. Here. Yeah. Okay. Now the metal board that was found. Very cool, yeah. Yeah. The metal board that I showed you and the chain was found right in this river in 2005.
Who was in the fire?
In 2000, the metal ball,
Oh,
yeah,
that ball.
it was found right here, but not at this river, but the last bat. When they came, normally the last bat, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So normally when descendants come to visit, as I said, we believe it's a first bat of return, not a last bat. And that is why we bring them here. But one particular lady was stubborn and curious. Her colleagues were here. She was the only one that walked to the last bat area, and that was how she found the metal ball. I believe it was a miracle because if she had stayed here, she wouldn't have found it. And that is when it was taken to the entrance, since to be shown as evidence. So as we stand in this river, we believe this particular river is very sacred. We are coming back to reconnect. I'll give you a moment of your own. Just pray, thank your ancestors for all the struggles that they went through. I'll give you a minute or two to do that. Just have a moment of your own after we do something else.
My sister Tanya, I pray for peace. I pray for calm. I pray for tranquility. I pray that you find a space that's just your own. I pray that you find solace in yourself when you connect with God. That is the thing that's going to help you grow in you and be a better you. As you connect with Him, your energy and your spirit will be even bigger and better and more positive.
Peace, y'all. Your spirit, your friendship is like no other. You're calm, you're welcome, you're open, you're giving, you're loving. And I pray that God will continue to bless you, that His Spirit will continue to rest upon you, and that no matter what you go through, know that God is right there with you. No matter what the times are, how hard it is, God is our rock.
What does the memory of this place, right, with its history and everything about our ancestors, say, affect your viewpoint about life, about how you see freedom, about how you define identity and opportunities?
I believe there is a lot of way that this particular place connects us to our identity and our roots. Because as I always say, the people that were taken from us, that is our people that find themselves in the New World. The Black Americans, the African Americans are our people because they were taken right from this land. But the identities were the ones that were taken from them. They had names like us, but those names were taken and they gave them the slave names. Because one unique thing about us is that with our naming system, they can trace you to a particular tribe and location you are coming from. And once those things were taken off, the identities were taken. Now they find themselves in the United States, they don't think they are Ghanaians or Africans. That is why when they come back, we have a way of connecting them. One way is the naming ceremony. We believe you have to give them the names that were taken off, and that is the connection that we want to have with them. Another thing is that as they come here, we believe this is a pilgrimage. This was the exact same land as their ancestors were taken. So as they come back, they are coming to reconnect, revisit the land of their ancestors. As they make the walk to the river before they connect, we let them ground with the land, walk on the land of their ancestors barefooted so that they have a connection. They step into the river, share their wishes, pray, do whatever they want to do. It just depends on their belief. They do all that. That is the first part of it, and that is what we have behind us. We believe they are returning to this particular land. They have to connect, and that is the way we connect them. After that, they get a chance to leave. In that case, we believe they are one of us now because they have connected very well, and they have to come back so that we see them every single time. Yeah, thank you.